Welcome to the series on critical thinking skills in science. This is Chapter 7, The Building of Western Science, Session Number 2. What we had established in Session Number 1 was the bottom of the structure, the foundation, and the ground level, ground zero of the structure. Ground zero is Western cultural tendency because we're building a Western science. The main tendency of thinking in the Western way of thinking is that there exists two separate domains, the natural domain and the supernatural domain, and that those you can separate. You can maintain separate, and that's what Thomas Aquinas had taught, in that the natural domain was under the dominion or the authority of the scientists, whereas the supernatural domain was under the authority of the church. So they just did a separation of basically church and state to maintain those two authority groups. So that is a Western thought. Now, with that thinking as the ground zero, then we establish the foundation of the house, which is our source of reliable knowledge. Where do we get knowledge from? And how do we get it? And that is, number one, we have the foundation, and it was internal human reason logic as knowledge, as our source of knowledge. So in other words, we go to our thinking in human reason to gain reliable knowledge, whereas the other ones were intuition, external authority, or empiricism. Science is built on reason, on human reasoning. And the human reason then, because it's a Western perspective, believes that we live in a closed system, and therefore we can study science and we can project forward. We can predict because it's a closed system. It's uniformitarian. It's going to be always performing this way, cause and effect, because it is a closed system. So that is the beginning, and that is what we're building on. If it's a closed system, then that means there can be no divine intervention, no miracles. So what we're doing is we're going to be now building our house. And it's going to have 4 columns down below on the floor, but the floor is going to regulate, and it's going to influence what the 4 beliefs are. Okay, these are basic beliefs that we're going to be now constructing over the foundation. So if the foundation starts with the source of reliable knowledge is human reason, human logic, logical knowledge, and that we live in a closed system, rule number 1, okay, basic belief number 1, what is that going to be? Well, pillar number 1, basic belief number 1, is based on human logic and reason and a closed system. The logical conclusion then is that only the natural domain exists, and that it is the only domain that we have to take into an account, especially in science, because it is the only domain that influences within the material world. How do we know that? We know that from the foundation. Because of the foundation down below, we've assumed a Western cultural perspective in that the natural and supernatural are 2 separate domains, and we can separate them off and study only the natural domain. So rule number 1 is only the natural domain exists. Now, is that proven? Is that a fact? And it's reliable knowledge. It's taken as a basic belief of reliable knowledge because it is a product of what we have assumed to be true, meaning our source of reliable knowledge and our cultural tendency, which believes in a closed system and the division of natural supernatural. That brings us to pillar number 2. That would be rule number 2. We have basic belief number 1, which is only the natural domain exists. And so rule number 2 would be based on human logic, reason, and closed system, the cosmos consists only of natural elements. Okay, well, that is based on logic, is that if only the natural domain exists, then all elements are natural. Everything within the cosmos is natural, meaning that it is a part of the system, it obeys all the same rules, it is produced by the same processes, and it has the same cause and effect. Rule number 1, only the natural domain. Rule number 2, only natural elements. Rule number 3. Pillar number 3, based on human logic, reason, and closed system, the cosmos, how does it function? It functions according to natural processes. Okay, how do we know that? Well, we know that because of our foundation. Our foundation is basically the source is human reason, human logic within a closed system. Can there be any other processes within a closed system? There cannot be. It is all natural within a closed system. So we have the natural domain is the only domain that exists. We have natural elements, and now we have natural processes. Pillar number 5, or pillar number 4, this is element number 5 within the house system, is based on human logic, reason, and closed system. The God of the Bible, or any other God for that matter, cannot in reality exist. Okay, so based on the foundation, assumption of a closed system, based on the foundation of the source of reliable knowledge within a closed system is human logic and reason, because there is no other source. We're the only source of it. So we then conclude that only the domain, natural domain exists. Only natural elements in that domain exist. All processes within that domain are natural processes, which then basically is a conclusion. Then the God of the Bible, or any other God for that matter, cannot, does not, will not in reality exist. Now that is kind of the key term, in reality, because they say you may believe in God, you may believe in spirits, you may believe in divinity, things that are divine, or even in miracles, but they are not a part of reality. They're more of a delusion. And so that's where we get the God delusion by Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins, excuse me. The God of the Bible, or any other God for that matter, cannot in reality exist. Now, why can't he exist? Well, it's because of the structure, because of the building process, because of the assumptions that we have made. What about these basic beliefs? Are they true? Are they justified? Where did they come from? Well, these 4 basic beliefs are built on the foundation. And they are called basic beliefs because they cannot be justified yet, because we haven't built our system of philosophical thought to logically justify, because whatever is justified has gone through the process of logically being defended. And even though these 4 columns are logical from coming from the foundation, they are assumptions. They are assumed to be true. So they're called basic beliefs, and they are not justified at this time. So where did these basic beliefs come from? Are they really a part of science? Well, this is where I found the information. and I was searching about different perspectives because Stephen Jay Gould, he and his quote were theory, habit, prejudice, and culture all influence the things that we choose to observe and how we perceive them. And so I started doing a little more research into what's going on here, and I came up with this article from Dr. Stephen D. Schaefersman. He's from the University of Miami in Ohio, and he wrote an article, published an article, and it says, or let me just read this. It says, these basic beliefs are supplied by Stephen D. Schaefersman in his article entitled Naturalism is Today, by History, Philosophy, and Purpose, an essential part of science. Now that shouldn't be surprising, really, because science, as its real definition, and it's where it comes from, scientia is knowledge. And so it's kind of like science is a way of coming to knowledge, getting knowledge. And the scientific method, which we'll go over in the next session, another session or two, is the method of getting to reliable knowledge. And so any knowledge then that we get through that method is considered reliable knowledge because of the source of where it comes from, human reason, human logic. So this house is being constructed upon pillars of basic beliefs that start with the number one, which is the source of reliable knowledge. It was chosen to be human reason, human logic, and closed system. So within a closed system, now there is no gods, and that's what the early philosophers said. The early philosophers made a break with the past because previously, being a non-Western cultural setting, they were very community driven, they were very authority respectful, and they were very much in the belief that things were that the gods had influence, that gods had produced things, matter, and that God had influence over matter. So the philosophers came in, the Western philosophers came in and did a dramatic break from the past by saying, no more religion, no more authority, no more tradition, no more revelation, no more, we're going directly with human reason. So that is the basis of this house that we're building, was the early philosophers. Now, based on their thinking, based on their assumption then that it's closed system and it's human reason is the best source of reliable knowledge, then we go with the four columns, which is the natural domain is the only one that exists. The natural elements are the only things that exist within that natural domain. Natural processes are the only processes that happen within that domain. And any God, divinity, entity does not exist. In reality, does not exist. In reality. Now, you might believe it in as something outside of reality, outside of the world of matter, outside the world of science, and you can believe that. And that's what Thomas Aquinas had promoted, was a division between natural and supernatural, so that you can believe in both of them, and both of them have their authority structure. So the natural world has the authority of science, and scientists, they tell us what the natural world is like, and the supernatural world is governed by the church and by their hierarchy of authority, and they tell us what God is like. So you can keep the two domains, but they're very separate. And again, that is a very Western concept of the divinities or the powers and the spirits and matter, because the non-Western world can't see a separation, does not even believe you can separate, and the dominant part of the non-Western world is the spiritual world over the matter, where in the Western world it's matter over the spiritual world. So it's a different perspective. But again, these beliefs were taken from and gotten from the article published by Stephen D. Schaefersman. That is session number 2. We're just building the house, and as we go, and it's a logical procession. We're just going up step by step, floor by floor, and each one is a progression, is justified by the floor below it, or by the rules that are below it. But what we have established now is the beginning of the thinking process through with the point ground zero, which is the Weltbild, which is life experiences, the tendencies, the cultural tendencies, our assumption of what is our source of reliable knowledge, the assumption then of the 4 beliefs that are basic beliefs that are a product of the assumption of our source of reliable knowledge. Thanks for joining me. Again, we're Tim and Holly. If you'd like to communicate with us, you can through the addresses that are on the board. This is session 2, and we're hope that you join us for session 3. This is chapter 7, Western Science. Thank you again for joining me.